Rogue Galaxy was an action RPG that released towards the end of the PlayStation 2's lifecycle, and it has to be one of the most impressive RPGs from a visual standpoint on the system. The game's environments are beautiful and diverse, and every planet you visit has a distinct look and feel that help the events of the narrative come to life. This is no more apparent than within the cutscenes that really showed off the graphic prowess of the PS2, and you can tell that the developers pushed the system to the utmost of its potential. It was really easy to marvel at the beauty of this game and wonder how on earth it wasn't an early title for the PlayStation 3. It took on a sort of cel-shaded approach to its design, with each and every character receiving the same attention to detail as the environments. They all managed to feel unique and added a distinct flavour to the overall adventure, and although it's not the best RPG on the system when taking into account each and every facet of the experience, when looking solely at its visual presentation, there is no denying that Rogue Galaxy is one of the most impressive on the system. Zone of the Enders 2 was a huge improvement over the first entry in the series. This time around it took on a sort of cel-shaded aesthetic that helped it seamlessly blend with the various anime cutscenes scattered throughout the adventure, but the most impressive aspect of the visuals have to be once you enter combat. Virtually everything about it looked incredible. The mech models, explosions, smoke trails and weapon fire were a true sight to behold, and when the action heated up, it became pure bliss, with each engagement creating a light show of heavenly proportions. The sheer level of effects that would occur on screen was truly breathtaking at the time, and lent a level of urgency to each engagement that in my opinion had not been seen up until that point from the various games of a similar nature. Most of the designs were created by Yoji Shinkawa, the man responsible for the Metal Gear Solid characters, and he did not disappoint this time around. Each robot managed to feel incredibly unique, both in visual design as well as their function, which gave them a whole life of their own. But there are some downsides to the graphical presentation, mainly that of the environments that could at times feel quite bland, and when coupling this with the frame rate that would slightly dip once the action got heated, it could have the potential to turn some players away. But if you ask me, it did nothing to jeopardize the overall quality of the experience, and in my eyes it truly deserves being commended for everything that it got right. During their respective eras, each of the Final Fantasy titles have always been amongst the very top when it comes to visual presentation, and surely Final Fantasy X was no exception. Not surprisingly, it offered a wide variety in its surroundings, presenting locations from an exotic island with palm trees and beaches, icy mountains with snow caves, and to magical and otherworldly forests. It was also the first time in the series to fully utilize the use of 3D models in all of its environments, as opposed to the pre-rendered ones of old, making the characters and surroundings gel together in a much more believable way. Although the camera is fixed throughout play, the level of in-game detail more than made up for it, and propelled the world of Spira into one of the most memorable out of the entire series. Now, choosing between this and the 12th entry was a tough call, but my personal opinion tends to lean more to the overall design of number 10, as it just feels like a much more lived-in world, especially when you take into consideration one aspect where the visuals really shine, and that's through the use of full motion videos, which have always been an excellent tool for conveying the story. Although the characters do change a bit from their in-game models, the cinematic sequences were definitely jaw-dropping for the time, and is without a doubt even something to appreciate to this day. Odin Sphere has to be one of the most visually striking games available on the PlayStation 2. The character sprites that the adventure depicts are big and well detailed, with their movement and attacks playing out in a beautifully fluid fashion. The amount of detail on each sprite is wonderfully captured and very detailed as well, from heavy breathing, sadness to happiness and anger. A whole range of emotions are easy to point out. This aspect alone helps the narrative excel and propels Odin Sphere into a league of its own, but by far the most impressive aspect of the game are the environments that the action takes place in. Each location looks as if it was directly produced from a high quality watercolor painting, and it gives the entire experience the feel of being a living, breathing work of art. This all ties very nicely into the game's central motif of the gameplay taking place within a book. The game is so visually pleasing it could have sold on that aspect alone, which is really quite phenomenal when you consider what other visual feats have been accomplished on the system. If you've never given this one a go for yourself, I highly recommend that you do. Now let's get the bad right out of the way and discuss the main gripe many players had with Shadow of the Colossus, and that is its frame rate. There's no denying at times that the drops can be quite distracting, but when you take into account the sheer scope of the game and its graphical presentation, there's no denying that it's quite impressive. The gigantic colossi that occupy the world are truly incredible, and the way that they act as levels within themselves to overcome was something that had never been seen up until that point. Random patches of fur, moss and mold could be found on each of them, along with ages-old armor that complemented all of their designs, which were all different, ranging from huge birds of prey to bearded giants. They would fill the screen with majesty and provide some of the most awe-inspiring sights I'd ever experienced in a game. Only equal to this aspect of the experience are the range of environments you would find yourself seeking out. There was a serious amount of diversity when it came to the world you found yourself occupying. Admittedly, the character models are fairly simple in design, though the hero's animation is pretty smooth. His actions, whether he's running, climbing or stumbling, were about as believable as could be on the PS2. As I mentioned, the frame rate can at times be quite off-putting, but that doesn't deter from what Shadow of the Colossus got right. The Metal Gear Solid series has always been on the cutting edge of visual design. The third iteration in the series builds upon everything that the second entry presented, and not only from a gameplay perspective, but right down to individual animations and subtle details that make it one of the best looking games on the system. It leaves behind the rather urban aesthetic of the past and instead takes place within the fictional jungles of Russia. This was a huge departure from what had come before, and was a completely fresh take on the popular series. Each environment was thoroughly interactive, such as slicing trees with your knife that would result in leaving a scratch, as well as any plants or local fauna that could be cut up into little pieces. It didn't really contribute anything to the gameplay, but these vague little details really helped immerse the player within the world. But it wasn't only the locations that made it visually impressive. The clear love and attention that went into each of the character models is apparent right from the get-go. They now had a whole range of facial animations that helped convey the narrative in a much more believable way. It really helped bring life to the events that take place across the adventure, and in my opinion to the overall quality of the story. Matching this are the smooth and fluid animations during play, as well as several effects such as fire and explosions that felt a league above anything that had come before it. Metal Gear Solid 3 managed to push the PS2 hardware and create something truly unforgettable for both fans of the series as well as newcomers alike. Gran Turismo has always been the gold standard when it comes to visual presentation in racing games. The fourth entry took this to the absolute limit on the PlayStation 2 and presented one of, if not the most impressive racing experience on the system. It built upon everything that the third iteration introduced and brought each car and location to life in a manner that had never been seen. The most striking aspect has to be the environments, from the dense urban cities of New York to the open and breathtaking vistas of the mountains. Gran Turismo 4 had it all, and once again proved that the developers were true masters of their craft. Much like each location, every car model also saw a slight upgrade, and with the amount that were on offer, it was an impressive feat to say the least. From Nissan to Subaru and Ford, each of them were presented just like their real-life counterparts and lent the game a level of realism not often found by others on the market. In my eyes, Gran Turismo 4 represents the pinnacle of the series, not only visually but on the gameplay front as well. Even to this day, it's still a real blast to go back and take it out for a spin. The Tekken series has always been synonymous with the PlayStation brand. It kept pushing the boundaries of what was possible within the 3D fighting genre, and the fifth outing was no exception to this rule. Quite like previous entries in the series, the character models are front and center and possess a level of detail unlike anything the series had seen before. Each of them were meticulously designed and presented, which only complemented the beautiful way in which they were animated. Performing moves and special attacks during each encounter felt excellently smooth and lent a real sense of realism to each fight. The lighting and particle effects were a cut above the rest, as well as environmental touches such as wind and weather effects that all reacted in real time to the action on screen. Seeing it play out at a solid 60 frames per second was a real sight to behold back in the day, and still manages to impress even now. But one area that needs a special note are the stages that you'll find yourself fighting on. The amount that are included is outstanding, and with several interactive elements as well, they are some of the most impressive to ever come out of the series. Tekken 5 in my eyes is a culmination of everything that had been learnt up until that point, and in all honesty it is my favourite out of all of the franchise because of it. Black is quite possibly one of the most impressive visual experiences on the PS2. The first thing you'll notice are the incredible environments. Just about anything is destructible in each of them, and because of this it opens up a wide range of gameplay possibilities, such as being able to destroy cover that enemies may be hiding behind. But it goes a step further and even allows you to destroy certain aspects of the environment, such as entire buildings, which up until this point was something you would not often see from the genre. Matching this aspect of the visuals were the buttery smooth animations, especially the way each weapon would be reloaded during combat. Each of them looked outstanding and resembled their real life counterparts right down to the muzzle flash, recoil and even scratch marks. All of them were unique and lent a sense of realism to the on-screen action that helped Black stand out amongst the sea of first-person shooters on the system. At the time it was quite hard believing that this was all running on the PlayStation 2, and with the range of incredible effects such as the explosions, it often felt like a next-gen experience. And to top it all off, the frame rate was severely stable. If you've never played it, Black is one of those games that has managed to stand the test of time, and even now deserves a playthrough. The first thing that many players will notice about God of War 2 is the sheer quality of the game's visuals. When playing it for the first time back in the day, it really felt like a next-gen experience. It was nigh on unbelievable that it was running on the PS2. It was released at the very end of the system's lifecycle and pushed the machine to the absolute limits. Each environment was presented in a sort of grandiose fashion, such as impressive vistas full to the brim with little details occurring in the background, right up to the insane set pieces and enemies that would often fill the entire screen. The architecture, the flora and fauna, even the weather effects, everything was strikingly detailed, and each setting in the game featured its own unique aspects as well. Kratos will progress through, over and around some absolutely gigantic areas, and each time you'll want to take a second to marvel at how amazing the surroundings look. To top it all off, they're quite interactive as well, with plenty of objects to break or use against enemies that helped you feel grounded within the world. Matching this aspect were the animations, which felt incredibly responsive and smooth. Each battle would carry out in an almost dance-like fashion as you effortlessly ploughed through wave after wave of enemies thanks to the whole range of abilities you possessed. It made the combat one of the real stars of the show and helped cement Kratos' second journey as one of the best in the series. Well, that does it for the video. Don't forget to follow me on all of the socials to stay up to date on any future videos, and as always, thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.